Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are in the world. Scott Golden here, Golden Opportunities Coaching, and welcome to those of you who are new. Hopefully there's some new folks. I always love when new folks join the Progress Tribe. Today we're going to talk about loving your enemies. And I know it's a difficult topic, but more now than ever with the coronavirus out there and the challenges that are associated with watching literally thousands of people die worldwide every day. And there's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, and a lot of difficulties out there. I think we're being called to one love. And for those who believe in a higher power, they would call that godly love. For those who are struggling with issues of faith, you might call that, just humanitarianism or one love or unity. No matter where you are in the spiritual journey, I think we can all agree that our world needs love more than ever before. But that will call upon us to do something that is very difficult to do, and that is to love our enemies. And I think that gets very confusing. It gets difficult because if there are enemies, then why should we want to give them unconditional acceptance? Why should we want to care about them at all? Why should we want to be there for them and watch them grow and watch them develop? Why should we want to care what happens to them at all? This is actually spurred by a Twitter post I saw this morning. I was up early, about 4 a.m., and I poked around Twitter while I had a cup of caffeine, and there was a post that said something like, people are annoying because. And so I thought, I get annoyed with people quite a bit. Let me go deep diving into people are annoying because. And it hit me as I'm reading, people are stealing toilet paper and people are, hoarding stuff because of the pandemic. And here you see people from all over the world talking about how annoying it is that the selfish nature of humanity comes out in the middle of this pandemic. And then I thought, wait a minute. I'm annoyed that people have different standards when something happens to them, around them. And then if it happens in a third world country, there's a different standard, right? Like if something happens, if you live in the United States right now, or you live in the UK, or you live in Ireland, or you live in a built-up country, and something happens in your country, it's an outrage. But if something happens in the deep Congo in Africa and people die daily there in mass numbers, people starve in Africa, they struggle in portions of Asia, they have difficulties in Australia with wildfires, but everywhere in the world has its own issues and challenges, right? And yet we as people, as human beings, have this thing where it's not happening to me, so what's the big deal? And so now we're unified by this common ground of this pandemic, right? We're unified by this idea that, it could happen to any of us. Well, no duh, but it's been that way all along. Which means at the core of whomever we are, we have to love our enemies because, upon occasion, you may find somebody you don't particularly care for, don't agree with politically, don't agree with socially, don't agree with for any number of reasons, might need your help somewhere down the road. And are you really going to turn your back on them because they're different from you? Now, keep in mind something. Love means different things to different people. There's a mentor of mine, somebody that I admire. His name is Bruce Pritchard. He's executive for World Wrestling Entertainment, and he has a T-shirt that I love. And cheap plug, if you're a wrestling fan, you'll probably have heard about this because you'll have heard his podcast where he talks about this. But anyway, just because it says on the shirt, just because I love you doesn't mean I have to like you. And so, and I love that shirt, and I wanted that shirt is on my to-get list because it's so true, right? I can love you, which is I can want the best for you, but I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to like you. I don't have to be in relationship with you. I don't have to spend time with you. I can love you as a fellow human being and want you to headbutt a sidewalk. I can love you from a distance, want what's best for you, want you to get some dose of reality that makes you a better person, and still be like, but I'm not going to hang out with you. There's this misnomer in our world today that we all have to agree. And there's a counterculture of, if someone doesn't agree with me, they don't accept me. Huh? Where'd that come from? I don't get it. Because there are tons of people I don't agree with on a variety of topics. If I were to share my political viewpoint on this channel, and I won't, then I'd probably get a bunch of hate. If I were to share my religious viewpoint on this channel, and again I won't, I'd probably get a bunch of hate. But you know what? Part of loving another person is meeting them where they are so that you can get them where they're going and you can journey with them in whatever way possible. Every person that you meet, no matter who they are, no matter where they are in your journey, no matter how long they're in your life, no matter what their race is, their color, their creed, their ethnicity, their physical abilities, their mental abilities, they can teach you something and you can teach them something. We can all be the student, we can all be the teacher. We are unified by the idea that we can all learn and grow and we can all teach and grow, okay? But here's the thing. Most of us go, I can't learn from somebody who blah, blah, blah. I can't learn from somebody who's poor. I can't learn from somebody who's a Republican. I can't learn from somebody who's a Democrat. I can't learn from somebody black. I can't learn from somebody white. You know what? Sooner or later, if you put too many qualifiers on it, you're going to make yourself pretty dang stupid, because you're only going to associate with those people whom you agree with, which means there'll be no growth to your viewpoint, no growth to your mind, no growth to your experiences, which means sooner or later you're going to think falsely that you have the answer, quote, quote, and that your way is the only, quote, quote, right way. And then all of a sudden you're going to have all these enemies where you could have had friends, because if you just said, you know what, I don't agree with you, but I agree with your right to believe what you believe. I don't agree with you, but I'm glad that you have the freedom of choice and the freedom of focus to be able to say this is what I believe. It's so hard. Would you take your final meal and share it with your neighbor? Would you bring water to someone who could barely breathe because they have the coronavirus, or would you let them die on a sidewalk? Would you care for someone's kids because they're struggling with a fever with this virus, or they're struggling to work and they're working from home? Or would you say, not my problem, let the government handle it, let somebody else take care of it, let somebody else do something? Sometimes loving your neighbor and loving your enemy means doing things that make you uncomfortable. And that discomfort is part of the growth. We're all here for a different reason. Some of us have been through a lot of heavy stuff. I saw another hashtag today that I want to address, and that's another thing that brought this to light. There's a hashtag on Twitter that said, why I didn't report. And I clicked on it because I was curious. I get curious real easy over things. And it was about sexual abuse and other abuse survivors who didn't choose to report their abusers for a variety of reasons. And it hit me hard. And here's where I sound like a wimp, and I busted out crying. Because I've been there. As a survivor of every type of abuse you could possibly imagine, I have been there. I didn't report because my abusers were relatives, and they had connections with a local police department, and no one believed me even when I tried. That's my story. But there's millions of others, thousands of others, just like that. And so I've got a disability. I've got cerebral palsy. There are other people. I actually ran across a woman in the quote thread that also had CP, and I reached out to her and offered support. And I said, you know, it's hard to carry that alone, especially when you have a disability, especially when you're challenged. I said, you know, feel free to reach out. And then I got to thinking about love my enemies. Wait a second. That means technically, if I'm living it and I'm not giving lip service, I have to find a way to give love to even those who were my abusers. Now, there is no way on this planet or any other or any that's created between now and the end of time, twice boiled on Sundays, that I would ever be in relationship with my biological family again. You couldn't pay me enough, wouldn't do it. But that doesn't mean for those of them that still remain, and there's only less than 3 probably. Anyway, that doesn't mean that I can't wish them well from afar. That doesn't mean I can't send positive thoughts to them, positive energy to them, and say, gee, I hope you're having a life that's uplifting you. Because sometimes love your enemy just means, you know what, I release this. I'm letting go of the hatred. I'm letting go of the pain. I'm letting go of the anger. I'm hoping that you find a way to let go of what you did to me or somebody else. I'm hoping that you find a way to find value in and grow through your bad behavior. It's interesting that Easter is this weekend. If we use Christ as a Savior, that's one thing. If we use Christ as a prophet, that's another. If we use Christ as a teacher, that's another. But I find something really interesting. Various scriptural translations say that Christ is hanging on the cross, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they're doing." I would say that of all the scriptures I've read, and I've read a lot about world religions over the years, been studying world philosophies for 2 decades, and I don't say that to toot my own horn, I just say that to say I've done a good bit of study. I think that is one of the most profound things in any sacred text anywhere. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they're doing. And yet, who do we globally have to forgive? Do we have to forgive in our lives? Do we have to forgive family members? Do we have to forgive a former partner? Do we have to forgive our children if they've gone off the rails and they maybe are doing drugs or they got pregnant young or whatever? Do we have to forgive our boss or our leaders in positions of authority in companies because they're abusing their power? Do we have to forgive our political leaders because in their zest to try to find solutions to worldwide problems, sometimes they act with ego and pride? Do we have to forgive the human nature of the flawed system politically that says there's Democrat, Republican, Whig and Tory, dictatorship versus monarchy, monarchy versus democracy? In other words, do we really know anything that takes us away from the idea that we've got a lot of forgiveness to do? Because there's a lot of people who think they have answers, who believe wholeheartedly that inside them exists the solution to the Rubik's Cube that is our world. And yet they come up short. Now we can do one of two things when they come up short. We can kick them in the head and say, you horrible person, you. Or we can say, I'm going to choose to believe that you didn't mean to cause the pain you did, and if you did, I'm going to choose to believe that you can do better in the future. But I forgive you, and I love you for your journey. I mean, imagine. I want you to think about something, because I think this applies to everybody today, and then we'll close for today, but I want you to imagine the most difficult conversation you have had in the last 30 days. Maybe it's with a spouse, maybe it's with a parent, maybe it's with a coworker, a colleague, a supervisor, a boss, position of authority. Maybe you're going to court and you've got to talk to your parole officer. I don't know who it is, but you've had at least one really difficult conversation in the last 30 days. I guarantee it. Well, anyway, you walk into that conversation, you roll into that conversation, you meet the person for that conversation. At any point in that conversation, let me stop you and ask you a question. Did you ever think, gee, I hope this person thinks I'm wrong with my position? I hope they tell me I'm wrong. You're saying, Scott, of course not. How come? I mean, in a conversation where there's disagreement, somebody's got to be right or wrong, right? No. We can be different and not be adversarial. And that is what an unbelieving world who doesn't believe in unity as much as we should simply finds unbelievable. That in 2020, as we all struggle to get back to the world that we once knew, that isn't that far away, we can let go of the stuff that isn't working. We can come back to a semblance of rebuilding. And we can love the things that we don't understand just because we can. We can love our enemies as ourselves. I'll close with this too. There's a commercial for State Farm Insurance. It's just come out. And I find the sentiment of the commercial to be offensive. I find the core value to be useful, but the way it was portrayed I find offensive. Now, who cares? I'm offended. Big whoop, right? I'm not going to go get a lawyer, not going to run and hide in a corner. But they said, during this time of our new normal. And I went, wait a minute. Since when is fear, claustrophobia, fear of death, everybody shaking in a corner, everybody worried about what's going to happen next, a new normal? A new abnormal, maybe? But I refuse to believe in a world where we're not going to recover from this virus. I refuse to believe in a world where we can't come away stronger than we were before. But in order to do that, it's going to take forgiveness. If you've lost somebody to this virus, I'm sorry, and my condolences to your loved ones and your family and your friends, but you're going to have to go through the journey of forgiving the medical professionals who couldn't save your loved one. And that's going to be a hard journey. If you have a boss that lays you off because they feel they don't have a choice, before you get another job that you thrive in, you're going to have to go through the forgiveness of your boss who had to make the decision to take food off the table, and they didn't make it lightly. Here's the point. All of us are being called to show more love to our enemies and our friends, and the friends we haven't made yet, currently known as strangers. The only way we get through this and evolve as a conscious society is through love. At least that's what I believe. You don't have to agree with me, but you might want to think about it. This has been Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, please send me a DM on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter at PO Perception, and we can work out arrangements if needed. Flexible payment available for those in need, especially during these trying times. I remind you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.